let's get started. We are here today in our Creating Your Ideal Life, Distilling Wisdom from Books series. So we're continuing on with our final review meeting today about the Motivation Manifesto, the book by Brendon Burchard, 9 Declarations to Claim Your Personal Power. And we have covered the first 8 chapters of part 2. We covered part 1 and the first 8 chapters of part 2. And so now we're on to the final chapter, chapter 9, and also our overall thoughts about the book as a whole. And so we'll get to everybody's thoughts on that and how, in whatever way, it's impacted on you and how you've been able to implement anything from this book. And let's just quickly welcome Stan. Welcome aboard, Stan. Good to see you this morning. So we've got Wendy from New York. We've got Stan from the other end of Perth to me in Western Australia. Yanni from California, and we've got V from Nannup down in the southwest of Western Australia. So welcome everyone, and let's go without further ado on to chapter 9 of the Motivation Manifesto. Well, I'm calling it chapter 9. It's actually chapter IX because for some reason he decided to go all Roman on it, and and so this one is called We Shall Slow Time. So of course this will actually be a 2-hour meeting. No, I'm kidding. It's just a 1-hour meeting. It'll just feel like 2 hours because we'll slow time down and I'll talk very slowly. Just having a bit of fun there. So what is it all about? Well, the opening quote sums it up rather nicely, really. The aim of life is to live, and to live means to be aware, joyously, drunkenly, serenely, divinely aware. Well, I think I've got a handle on the drunkenly part. My misspent youth and everything. Serenely, divinely, joyously, being aware. Isn't that wonderful? Being aware. Well, V was just describing being aware with her interactions with horses, and just how just taking in everything around you and sort of opening, enhancing your senses. And I suppose that a summary of that would be being mindful, wouldn't it? That's what the mindfulness movement is all about, is being present, being actually right here in the moment. So I mean, I could highlight this whole chapter really in a way, but certainly the starting point of it was life is meant to be a vibrant, deeply felt, growing mosaic of meaningful moments. He really does have a great sort of poetic way of putting things. It is to be a grand, fully engaged and unconditionally committed love affair with our daily experience. Now that might seem like it's a little bit hard to do if you're going through a bit of a tough time in life, and you know, we'll have our ups and downs. But one of the key things that seems to come out of that is to look for the good in every moment, to not just to see a situation as being all bad. There's always some light at the end of the tunnel, and I know that that can be very hard if you're going through something that's quite traumatic or really distressing or, you know, very saddening. So perhaps in those moments you just have to feel what you're intended to feel and then work back from there to make sense of it and to try to reframe it in some way in a more positive light. I know that's easy said, but if it's something catastrophic, then that might not be so easily done. But he says we are not supposed to miss this moment. Well, just bear with me a moment. I'll just let Jane in. She's joining the call as well. Jane coming in from New York.
Recording in progress.
So welcome, Jane from New York.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Tony.
How are you going? So we're just summarizing chapter 9 of part 2, Jane, or Declaration IX, Declaration 9. We shall slow time, and so it says we are not supposed to miss this moment, which is exactly the moment that you just turned up, Jane. So that was obviously perfect timing. We didn't miss the moment. Here you are. So we're not supposed to go barreling through life half numb, unaware of our senses and surroundings, deaf and blind to the magical qualities of the moment. And I love this line. This day is to be enjoyed like a pause at a cool stream during summer's heat. He should be a writer, this guy, shouldn't he? Really, you know, that's he's got a great way of summing it up. Even in darker times, we should look around us with awe, taking in the beautiful scenes and small wonders that surely abound, fascinated even with any hint of hope in the darkness, like staring into a moonlit field, alive with a million silent fireflies. You can really put yourself in that field, can't you? You can imagine that. And so he's very descriptive. But like I said, it may not be so easy if you're going through a really tough time, a really catastrophic time. But I think nevertheless, there's always something good to be found. And you might just have to look a little harder if you're having a tough time. Okay, so we're not supposed to miss this moment. He repeats a few times and he gives you some examples here about being frenzied and unfocused and having so much going on, so being so busy. Also not missing the moment because we're having a sedentary life stuck in front of a computer. Now we're all in front of a computer, but we're having a great time, aren't we? We're buzzing here, so we're not missing this moment at all. But he goes on to say that we're not meant to be trapped in the past. Our soul isn't meant to be trapped in the past, and the futility of that, you know, that we can tend to feel guilty or sad or upset about things that happened or didn't happen in the past, how they were supposed to happen, how expectations were not met. But it's about being present, and you know, a lot of these books are coming back to this key point: being present, being in the now, not missing our families, particularly if you've got children growing up. And I know Yanni and Stan are definitely going through that, where you've got young children. You want to be there, you want to be present, you don't want to miss any of it if you possibly can. And also, well, I suppose the summary of that is we're not supposed to miss this life, but we do, all frazzled, stressed, and stripped away from the moment. The cost is immense, so many moments blurred by speed and worry and panic, creating the catastrophe of a joyless life. Now, I know that doesn't apply to us because we're all here having great joy and fun on this call and reviewing this book and learning from it. We can experience so much more of life. It takes very little focus and effort to increase our awareness of the gift of each day, to insert more depth and feeling and meaning in life again. So really it is what you make of it, isn't it? We're all going to have ups and downs, but we can choose how we're going to look at things. He says we must slow it all down so that we can feel it once more, enjoy it once more, live it perhaps for the first time. So have we been allowing ourselves not to do that? And he goes on to talk about time being finite. I thought there would be more time to enjoy them and watch them grow, talking about your children, talking about a job. I thought there would be more time to demonstrate excellence and make my mark. So if your job ends or you're made redundant, then you might feel sad and think, oh, I could have done more, I should have done more. If your partner leaves and you didn't see that coming, then you go, I thought there would be more time to express how much I love you. Was it that you took them for granted? Was it you weren't present? We've all had relationships that have ended, and you do wonder, what could I have done differently? So he says, how did we not know all this? How do we so foolhardily miss the irony of it all? That here in an infinite universe, time is finite for us, but even if we cannot discern the order and reason for it all, the outcome is predictable. Life will randomly and too soon be taken away, perhaps brutishly or easily, but likely with little fanfare or crescendo, other than hopefully the love that has gathered around us. So that is one thing we all know. Well, death and taxes, isn't it, as they say? There'll always be taxes, damn it. And yes, we're all gonna shuffle off this mortal coil, as Shakespeare eloquently said, at some point. So what are we going to do between now and then, that time that we've got? Are we going to waste it worrying about stuff? Does that achieve anything? Not really. Or are we going to savor the moments and have more of those, if you say in inverted commas, as Austin Powers does it, Kodak moments? Have more of those moments in life. So I love this, and I highlighted this in orange, people, so you know this is important, right? My friend, you are where you are supposed to be already. You do not see. Stop looking for something else and look and feel all around. Everything is here now. Miss it and you will have missed life. Wow, powerful stuff, hey? So yes, we can't change the past. Worrying about the future doesn't really solve much. Doing something about it might do. But being present is what matters. So all that matters is what is here now before us, to be lived and defined and experienced as we choose. And yes, as we've said in previous chapters, we always have that choice. Now it goes on to talk about the sensory animal. Who's ever been involved in an accident of some form? Anyone? Everyone? At some point witnessed something like that? Don't you find, or do you remember finding, that it appears as if everything's happening in slow motion? It's so true, isn't it? You see a car accident or something. I remember seeing a car. I was driving down the freeway at night, and this car literally spun through the air like a toy, or, you know, one of these Hollywood movies. This car was literally flipping over and over and over and landed on its roof in front of me. And I luckily managed to brake. But when I saw it out of my peripheral vision, and this thing coming towards me, I thought it was like a spaceship. And I really couldn't make sense of it. I was like, what is this thing that's coming at me? And then bang, this car landed on its roof right in front of me. And I'll never forget that, because it was so slow. Everything slowed right down. And then I slammed on the brakes and stopped, and there's this car with bits of glass flying off it and smoke coming out of it and everything right on its roof in front of me. Sadly, the driver had killed himself. They'd been speeding at 170 kilometers an hour up the freeway and weaving between the traffic, and they lost control, hit the dirt, went over the center island, and the car just did that. So any sort of accident, though, any sort of incident that you witness, everything is slowed right down. So what he's saying is, we know that that happens. We know that our senses are racing at such a heightened sense of alert that we've become aware of every little detail. What if we can control that? What if we can actually slow things down consciously? And he suggests that you can start doing that with breath. So that the longer we draw air in and our bodies become more oxygenated, then we heighten our energy and our presence. So instead of it just waiting for something catastrophic to happen, why not savor the happy moments as well? Why not slow down time and increase your alertness and your senses to really fully appreciate the beauty of those moments? So he says, when we attune to our breath and deepen and lengthen the volume of air that we draw in, it has an immediate and extraordinary impact on how we experience the moment. We all know it's possible, because we've all experienced it, witnessing something not so pleasant. And if we can remember that, if we can control that, and we could actually focus on taking note of things with more detail, with more clarity, more precision. He says we should take note of the color, texture, and placement of objects around us. We can notice the way the tree branch sways rhythmically with the wind as we gaze out the window. That's something I love to do where we live. And first thing when I wake up and look out of our bedroom window, we've got trees in front of us and this magnificent view off into the distance, looking out across this landscape of, it's like we're kind of at the equivalent of aircraft circuit height. So we're just short of that. We're about 800 feet off sea level. And so we actually see all the planes coming into Perth Airport, and I just get this magnificent view when I wake up of the hills all around the escarpment, and you see all the trees just gently swaying in the breeze. And then this morning, I remember waking up and hearing the kookaburras singing, which are these beautiful Australian birds that make this really distinctive sound, and which can be quite annoying if you don't want to be listening to it. But I just love hearing them, and they sing to each other. So noticing those things is it just enhances your experience of life, and you just suddenly feel more alive and more present by just taking a moment to notice that. And this one as well, this is something you can practice anywhere, assuming you go outside, or you can, they've got a window you can look out. Watch the cloud formations, look at the clouds and notice, what shapes do they make? What can you imagine in those shapes? What do you see? Faces? Do you see animals? Do you see all kinds of things? And it's extraordinary, just the shapes that clouds can form. So taking a moment to do that and breathing it in can really slow down your experience and give you a fresh perspective. It's incredible how we have the power to do that as humans. We can be feeling all anxious and stressed and worrying about stuff that's going on, and think, I've got to get that email done, and I've got this business meeting to go to, and this to do, and that to do. And if you just pause and breathe and look at the clouds, or watch the trees sway, and listen to the birds, suddenly slowed yourself right down, and none of those other things that you were stressed about are as important as they were a minute ago. They all just seem to, I don't know, mellow out and don't take that high level of importance. All right. So it is such a simple formula. The more senses we bring to the moment, the more time slows, the more a catalogue of joyful, vivid memories grows in our minds, the more life is filled with gratitude, that word gratitude again, and the more nourished our soul. So what would happen to the quality of our life and relationships if we simply amplified our senses just a little longer? And I just love this. Let us forget for now where we're supposed to be and what we should be doing, because we're all very good at shoulding, aren't we? Shoulding, I should be doing this, and I should do that, and I should have done this, and I should do that. So let us instead hold this moment for just 2 beats longer. 2 beats, just that little bit longer, and suddenly things just do slow down. Do not breathe so quickly. Take in air for 2 beats longer. Do not scan the room. Sense the room by gazing into each shadow and corner for 2 beats longer. Do not merely glance at her or him, depending on your persuasion. Look into her eyes or his eyes and hold them for 2 beats longer. Do not gulp down the next meal. That's so easy to do when you're in a rush, isn't it? You suddenly eat something and I didn't even notice what I was eating there. But savor each bite for 2 beats longer. Let the tastes melt and linger. That's actually quite good for weight management too. If you take a little bit longer to eat your meal and really enjoy it, you actually slow down and you feel full quicker. So you don't eat as much, in theory anyway. Do not send the heartless note. Read it once more and spend 2 beats longer sensing the pain it may cause another. So that before you hit send on an email or a letter, just stop and think, hang on, if I was the person receiving this and I reread it, could I read it differently to what I'd actually intended, how I intended it to come across? Would they maybe take it the wrong way? Could I rephrase that slightly? And just, it's incredible when you look back over some of the emails and letters you might have sent in the past and think, oh, actually, I was a bit harsh there. I maybe was a bit sarcastic, or not me, sarcastic? No, never. Possibly my sense of humor, see, but not everyone appreciates my sense of humor. So do not give a perfunctory kiss goodbye while juggling everything on the way out the door. Make the kiss count. Make it firm and solid and true. Last, holding the moment passionately for 2 beats longer. Just as a disclaimer there, you might want to ask permission first before you go randomly kissing strangers. I don't think he's suggesting that. But the people who you normally would kiss, maybe, take a little bit longer on it. Because you know it's extraordinary to think this, but what if that was the last time you saw that person? You know, I don't mean to be morbid when I say that, but you have to sort of consider that it's a possibility. You know, we're all going out onto the roads, into the traffic. Anything can happen anytime. You know, it's like that night that I was driving and suddenly this car landed on its roof in front of me. I mean, I'm sure that person who was driving that car wasn't expecting that to happen, and you just don't know, do you? It might not even be your fault. Like if I'd have been a second further down the road, that car would have landed on top of my vehicle, and I wouldn't be here talking to you now. So it's so easy for those hit and miss situations to occur, and none of us can predict that. So that sort of concludes chapter 9, my thoughts on it. What are your thoughts on chapter 9 and slowing down time? We'll slow down the meeting so you've got ample time to get your thoughts out there. Who'd like to go first? Be slow, but Wendy's got a hand up.
I could pause. I really enjoyed that, and it's actually been a goal of mine lately is to slow down, because I would say, let's say my first 50 years, I was raising children, having a business, so it was a very active time, which is, I think, normal. And now I'm now on the other side of the coin, and the children are grown, and I'm actually spending more time slowing down. Like when I'm going for a walk with my children, I'm like, slow down, it's not a marathon, let's take a look around. Or when we go into a store, like I did with my daughter this weekend, I said, we were just walking through and I'm like, wow, I'm really enjoying this. And she says, Mom, it's Target. And I'm like, I said, yeah, but I said, did you notice how colorful the greeting cards look and how everything's laid out so nicely here? And it's a really pretty store. And she actually paused for a moment and looked around and she goes, you know, Mom, this is a nice store. So we really enjoyed looking around and enjoying that moment together, even though we were just picking up a few things that we wanted from Target. And even if they didn't have everything we wanted, I said, well, it's an adventure. We got to look at a different store because I hadn't gone into that one, but it was nice. So I really did take it to heart, this chapter.
Well done.
You know,
that's very good. You just a little observation there, because it made me laugh when you said that. You got to be careful that people don't think you're on drugs. There was a movie, because when you said that about slowing down and noticing the colors and so on, there was a movie, I think, was it called Get the Geek to the Wedding or something like that? Get me to the geek. I don't know if you can remember that movie. And this guy had in the movie had been given some drugs he didn't know that he had. And next thing is he's stroking the wall. Oh wow, look at the wall. So it just made me think of that and made me laugh. But yeah, it's a really good observation.
Yeah, what was, like I said, a nice thing is I brought somebody else with me in that slowing down moment.
Yes, that's wonderful, isn't it? Because you've influenced someone to make them think and make them slow down. Was that as a result of reading the book?
Yeah, because I finished the that was such a good chapter. I just read right through it. So I finished it on a Friday. So she had just come, and we went out, and I was actually practicing at the time, and I maybe in the past or even before, I just didn't think about slowing down and just taking a look around in a store, you know, just an odd time to do it.
And it's difficult because there's so much to look at in a retail store. Anyone else find shopping a bit exhausting? Like sensory overload, because there's so many. I go into stores, and I'm an ex-retailer, of course, so I used to do these little tricks on people where you you set things up so that they end up buying stuff that they didn't know that they wanted and couldn't live without until they came into your store. So I go into some of these stores like Bunnings, the hardware store in Western Australia, and it's really hard to go in for one thing and just come out with that one thing that you went in for, because you always see stuff that you want to buy as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. V, did you want to add something? You were smiling gleefully there before.
I'm just smiling at everybody else's comments as well, but yeah, it's really resonating with me, even though I haven't read the chapter yet. But I do have Brendan's motivation manifesto cards, and I have committed to actually putting one on my social media every Monday, Motivation Monday, and doing a little spiel on that. So and I did hear you actually quote one of the cards effectively, so I'm kind of reading it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's such an incredible writer, but it basically boils down to gratitude and presence, doesn't it? About being present when time does slow down. And as you said with the horses, it's so important, because if you're not present with them, they feel it and they won't respond and they will not listen to you. Same with any animal. If you're trying to train them, if you're not present with them, if you've and I've noticed this with the cats, even if I'm angry and I don't even notice I'm angry, I've just snapped at something, they won't come anywhere near me. They know. They know better than I do. So yes, learning about presence and the walking in nature is just so powerful as well. All these little things we can do to help ourselves during the day.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned animals. Dogs are great for that. Really slowing things down, because they just live in the moment. They're just awesome. And we've got a golden retriever, and it's just wonderful watching him and how he plays and how he just finds something happy to be, or something to be happy about in every moment. Jane, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a funny thing that happened to me, I don't know, 3 weeks ago. I have a 5-year-old granddaughter, and we were running and doing all sorts of things in the backyard. And we sat in a chair. She's sitting on my lap. And I said, let's just relax, look up at the sky. It's a beautiful day. And, you know, and she's, Grammy, do you brush your teeth? And I said, yes, I do. And I said, does my breath smell? She said, well, it's really not bad, but it is making me hungry. It's like, so much for just looking up at the sky and slowing time down. It's like, okay, my breath is making her hungry.
Well, noticing senses, wasn't it? Still being aware of the senses. And for her,
yes, I thought it was just hilarious. I just couldn't even get over it. But yeah, that'll teach me to just, slow down and smell the roses. It's like, anyways.
Well, maybe you should just eat some roses and then your breath.
That's it. Get that sweet. That lovely rose taste that everyone can admire. Well, she can, at least she can, because you're usually not that. I mean, to a little kid, they like getting close, face to face kind of a thing, and you're usually not. But certainly, maybe I need to bring those mints around with me,
Good. Okay. Yeah. Does anyone else, Yanni or Stan, want to add anything to chapter 9 and our thoughts on chapter 9? Oh, both gone off camera.
Yeah, I'm sorry, sister. Now I have to go pick up my baby. Well, for me, well, I didn't get to read it, but what you're talking about, it makes me understand that when I'm in the rush, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and they're like, Mom, why do you do that? She tells me, And I was like, what do you mean? Why you throw this away? I'm like, no, I didn't. She's like, look what you're doing. Like, now I understand why when we were small, time seems so slow, right? Because we were so in the moment. And it's like, now I understand why kids notice every single thing you do because they're in the moment. They're not thinking, like when they're fight with their kids, they do this, whatever. They forget about it. And like it says, don't live in the past, And I'm just like, and it's interesting. And as you get older, all these worldly stuff, job, the appointments and this and that and responsibility, it robs us from that, as much as I try to be in the in the meeting, I have to be getting ready because after this I have to go get her and then go to work again. So it's just like being able to schedule my time, to able to take my time to enjoy the moment is something I want to work on, because I'm passing from one thing to another. And the heartbeats part, I love that. Even to eat, I'm so like, just right now, you guys, I just got a salad and I was just rushing because I have to go. And when you just said that, the 2 bites, I was like, that is true. I didn't even enjoy the salad. I just ate it, I mean, that will be a work in progress for sure. And I remember when I was with one of my friends, he's a millionaire farmer and stuff. And you could notice when they're actually are present. You might not be, but just their presence I don't know why, but I think his energy, I felt it, that it made us, like all the people we were there, enjoy it as much. Like it's nice when somebody shares that with you. I don't know if I'm explaining that, like I'm understanding the energy. Like I cannot explain what happened, but just his presence allowed us all to be on alert. And I don't know if that meant we were all present, if that makes sense.
Yes, definitely. You can have an impact or an influence on the people around you by being present, and you pull them in. You do, like, if you can see if they're sort of going off track and being distracted, the fact that you're so focused can sort of jolt them into joining in with that focus and be, to be with you in that moment. Asking them a question is a great way of getting around that. Focusing on, what, me? You asked me a question, so now they've got to answer, so they have to be present in order to answer the question. So yeah, that's good. That's very good. So Yanni, if you have to go, then just go. We understand. It's no problem. All right.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be listening now. Thank you.
Okay, so that's chapter 9. That is the last chapter in the book. And then he just summarizes it with the 9 declarations again. So I know that I realize that some of you may not have completed the entire book, but from what you've seen or heard so far, whether you've read it or you've been listening to it on audio or you've had the chance to be in some of these meetings as we've reviewed it, what has been the impact of this book on you? What have been the greatest aha moments or realizations or things that you've been able to implement in your life as a result of this book? Anyone want to share anything there? I know you've already shared a couple of things there that have occurred to you, but from this chapter, but overall from the whole book. Anyone like to share anything? Wendy.
Yeah, hi. I actually got a lot out of the defeating the demons. As you know, that had a great impact on me, and the amplifying love had a very big it almost seems like those 2 chapters complemented each other, because one kind of happens because you do the other. So as you're amplifying love, you get the courage to overcome delay and division, and you start seeing that as you become more aware of it when it happens in your life, when you see it happening, and you can then take out your, for me, feather of courage and show love and be kind for that moment.
That's an interesting expression, feather of courage. Where did you get that from?
Well, they have this sort of courage, but I try to be a little softer about things. So my feather, my sword of courage is a feather. It's soft, but it still handles, because I always feel like the reality of the demons and the doubt and delay are illusions, and that can be easily feathered away like dust bunnies.
That's
yeah, I
that's curious that you've used that expression, because there's actually a movie, it immediately reminded me of a movie called The Four Feathers. And it was about a soldier who was deemed, he was a conscientious objector. He didn't want to go to war, and his mates who were training to be in the army all presented him with a white feather. So it's called the Four Feathers, and the symbol was that the white feather was a symbol of cowardice. So it's interesting that you see a feather as being a symbol of courage.
Yeah. Well, if you think about the movie, in actuality, I think those feathers brought an awareness to him. And because of those feathers, he actually became the bravest of them all.
He did, didn't he?
And he became heroic. So he didn't think he should be going to war for a country over a place of an area that didn't mean anything to anybody.
Yeah.
But he went there to save his friends, and that was where his courage was. So he was really it was a different kind of courage. It wasn't just like, taking one for the team. He was going into
it was extraordinary. A very good movie, very powerful movie. If you haven't watched it, I'd highly recommend it.
That was
that's a really good share, Wendy. So so the demons was another thing that you particularly picked up on. I remember you talking about that when that resonated with you when we were going through that chapter.
Yeah, because I never saw it that way, and it was a different way to see something I already knew, but it was in such, he molded it in such a, I would say, a soft, unscary way, where it was something you could really confront. And I always think that once you know what something is, you can overcome it.
I think you've just nailed it. You summarized for me one of the reasons why I do these calls is that you can hear the same message from multiple people, from multiple speakers and authors, and suddenly for some reason you hear it this one way, worded a certain way by a certain speaker or a certain author, and suddenly it resonates with you. And it may be what you're going through in your life, that it's the timing of where you're at and what you're experiencing, or that suddenly there's this aha moment, this shift, where just that person speaks exactly to you, or definitely to you. And whereas you might have heard that same message from numerous other people, but it just didn't click. So that the power of repetition, the power of people expressing the same thing but in a slightly subtly different way can really have that magnificent effect on people. And then the lesson is learned at a time when you're supposed to learn it. So that's really great to hear that. And yeah, it's the fact that you're leveraging your time, because it's taken this person, let's say they write the book at the age of 40, and it's taken them 40 years to kind of crystallize all their thoughts into this moment where they're able to put it all together and into a book. So you're gaining the experience of someone having spent 40 years learning what they've just learned. And how long does it take you to read the book? Depending on how fast a reader you are, maybe a few hours. And suddenly you've picked up what it's taken that person a lifetime to learn, and you're looking at it in a few hours, and then you can process it and pick the bits out of it that are relevant to you. I think that's just a magnificent advantage and opportunity to to leverage your time, maximize your learning capability. So that's why I call it distilling wisdom from books, because it really is a sort of distilling process of taking the best bits. V, did you want to share anything that you've got overall from the book? I know you've missed a couple of the meetings, but I'm guessing that you've still been listening to the book on audio or whatever.
I have been reading, but I'm actually only through to "We Shall Defeat Our Demons." I'm halfway through that, so I haven't got through the rest of it. However, I'm going to finish it, and I'm going to think of the area that I need to work on the most, because I have read most of this from other places. I'm looking at "We Shall Defeat Our Demons," and that's so much about the faith. Comes back to Napoleon Hill as well. So it is about finding a different perspective and seeing what resonates and what I can take action on. But so far, I mean, the reclaiming our agenda, for me, it's so important. It's so easy to get distracted, especially our attention span has decreased thanks to social media. So reclaiming our agenda, I think, is so important for everybody, and to realize what we're here for, like what you're saying with this, extending our time, slowing down time. And, we're only here for a finite amount of time, but we can leave a legacy depending on, if we're actually following our life purpose. Discovering that and finding that and following that is so important, because most people are leaving it with their children, but there's more that we can do as well. So yeah, whatever legacy we're leaving is so important, and not to be distracted from that.
Awesome. Yeah, I totally agree that the reclaiming your agenda is so important, because it is just so easy to be at the mercy of all the noise, all the other people's agendas. And I've done it myself. This obsession with checking what's going on Facebook and what's going on other social media. Are you spending the time that you really want to focus on the things that you really want to learn or apply yourself to? Or are you running out of time because you're so busy looking at all this other stuff that may or may not be relevant? I mean, there's some great things about social media. I've certainly been able to connect with some people who I'd lost track with, or to become aware of another person's situation and maybe be able to be of some comfort or some help. Actually, I'll give a quick example as a sidebar of that this week, where something I've always done now for the last few years is I wish people happy birthday because Facebook pops up a reminder of when people's birthdays are. And so there was a girl who actually worked for me at the Backpackers. So it would be, oh God, what year was it now? It would have been 25 years ago. So that's how long ago that we had a connection, when she was working with me at the Backpackers. And beautiful, beautiful girl, very intelligent, speaks 6 languages. And she replied to my birthday wishes, and I hadn't heard from her for a very long time. And she informed me that this is a sad one, that her husband had unexpectedly died in her arms, had a cardiac arrest, and that she was left with her child to bring up on her own, and that she was suffering from post-traumatic shock from the experience of her husband suddenly collapsing and dying in her arms. And that just blew me away, and I was carefully struggling to find some words of comfort, but basically just to let her know that my thoughts are with her, and that if she ever needed to talk to anybody, she was welcome to call me at any time. And hopefully, if she's ever up in Perth, because she's down south, down in the country, or sorry, no, north of Perth, if she was ever passing through Perth, come and see us. And so we had a little bit of an exchange, a few words backwards and forwards. But I think, had I not gone on Facebook that day, I would never have known that, and I would never have been able to, I don't know to what extent it made a difference, but just maybe I hope and I think that in some way a few words that I was able to offer at least let her know that she wasn't alone, that there was other people out there who were aware of what she was going through and that she could talk to as a resource if she needed it. So you never know when you may just connect with someone unexpectedly, or reconnect with somebody. And that is one of the powerful things about social media. But on the other hand, it's also something that can take you away from your agenda of what you're planning to do or what you're working towards. But I felt with something like that, that was part of my agenda. That's my part of my agenda, is about being there for people when they need it. So and this is a person I hadn't spoken to for years, and then just suddenly that, you know, the universe just put that connection there, and so I just felt like I was supposed to be there to respond to that at that moment. And you know, and I got the feeling that she appreciated that. So reclaiming your agenda is certainly important, but being also aware of what's going on and being alert enough to respond to where you feel that it's needed, that you can make a difference, that you can interject, or you can offer a few words of support or comfort or encouragement to somebody who might be, you know, somebody might have achieved something, and just your support, your encouragement can make a difference to that person. Or they're going through a hard time, and you just being there to let them know that they, you know, they're not going through it on their own. At least they can call you or have a chat with you if they want to. So that's powerful too. I can't see faces. I'm just hoping you're still on the call and alert. Either Jane or Stan or Yanni, if you have anything that you want to add about your thoughts, what you've got from the book so far, anything you've been able to apply. Hold on, Yanni, you're breaking up. we can't hear you properly. Yeah, it's try again, Yanni. No, it's all echo. Sounds like you're in a toilet underwater somewhere. Sorry. Maybe put some thoughts in the chat box if you've got a bad connection at the moment. While Yanni's doing that, Jane, did you want to add anything else, or?
Yeah, yeah, that's it's a very thoughtful exchange that we're having, and I think it's important to slow down. I guess I consider myself ultra lucky to be on that other side that Wendy was speaking about, where, you know, your children are grown, and I do have time. And I specifically, you know, I like what everyone is saying, that it's important to take time and to understand the finiteness of our lives, and to enjoy. And I think this particular book, as you know, it was kind of profound when you said, you know, it took years of living for the author to live what he wrote, yet we will breeze through it in no time at all. It's almost like, have you ever heard of living your dash? Is that, I don't know if that's okay. As the story goes, you often see in obituaries, there's the year that the person's born, a dash, and then the year they passed. And it's like, wow, beginning, end. But what about that dash? What are you doing? You know, how did you live your life? Are you living your dash? And so that's what, you know, this kind of reminds me of. the in between. And, you know, as you were talking about the accident, and yes, if you were at the wrong place at the wrong time, you know, what would that have meant for you? Um, yeah. So I think it's terrific to reflect like this, and to just kind of be in the moment, in the, you know, Eckhart Tolle, be in the present, be in the now. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Wendy. That's from Jane, sorry. That's a fantastic share. I'd never heard that before, live in the dash, and that really is quite a powerful thing I'll take away from this meeting.
Yeah.
Because it really is about defining your legacy. How do you want to live? How do you want to be remembered? Interestingly, with that accident, had I not stopped, as I was actually driving the bus from the backpackers hostel out to the airport to pick up some new arrivals. They called me from the airport, and I was on my way down the highway to the airport to meet these two new people when the accident occurred. And I realized that afterwards, that had I not stopped as I was going down the front steps of the backpackers hostel to get into the bus, I stopped and had a conversation with a girl on the front steps. I was just asking her, I think something random, like she'd gone for a job interview or something. And so I took a moment to stop and ask her how it went and how she felt about it. And, you know, if I just showed an interest in how her day was going, because she was one of my guests, and that's what I did all the time. Was I've always been interested in people, and I took a moment to pause, even though I was busy and I was on the way to somewhere, to stop and ask her how her day was. Now, if I hadn't have done that, that could have been the difference between being able to stop and not hit that car, or it landing on my head, and I wouldn't be. So that conversation, that being alert to that person, just stopping to offer a few words of encouragement, or to inquire how their day was, or to care about them, that saved me.
Right. Yeah.
To know
Yeah.
the impact of these things. At every moment, you have an opportunity to make a difference to people around you, or to let it go, just breeze past, you know, and not notice. And we've said on some of the previous calls, things like stopping to smile at the person behind the checkout and ask them how their day is going, or, you know, to help a stranger in the shop. You know, I'm turning around recently, and there was a little old lady, and she was struggling to reach something off the top shelf, and I just walked over and, oh, can I get that for you? You know, get off the top shelf and pass it down, because it's just those sort of little things that you can do that can make a difference to somebody else's day. And that's one of the big things I got out of this book, is when he talks about contribution. You know, contribution is probably the biggest thing that we can all do, and the times when we can do it, it's easy not to do it as well. Probably easier not to do it in many cases, but just taking that moment to put somebody else, to notice what they're needing, or what would make a difference to them, and being that person who steps up and goes, yeah, I'll help you get that, or I'll help you do this, or just asking the question, can I help you with that? Would you like some help with that? Don't just assume it, because they might not want the help. But, you know, sometimes that can be just stopping and asking someone how their day's going might make the difference between, you might interrupt someone's thought patterns where they're actually contemplating suicide, or they're going through depression, or through some really traumatic thing, and just you stopping and asking them might click them out of that. You know, you just don't know. You don't know the impact that you might have on another person. But living the dash, I love that idea of, what does your life stand for? You know, it is finite. We all do have a finite amount of time, and one day somebody's going to be standing there giving a eulogy about you. And what are they going to say? What do you want them to say? What do you want to be remembered for? How do you want to be remembered? As a person who had time for people, or who was always too busy? Do you want to be remembered as a person who kept your word? I mean, that's something he talks about here, is integrity, and do not break integrity was declaration number 6. inspiring greatness. Do you want people to say, oh, they inspired me so much in whatever way that they could, you know? Somebody who mentored people, somebody who had time for people. And I love when I go into, particularly in the hills area where we live, there's certain buildings seem to have this connection with the past, where you go in and they've got old pictures on the wall of the settlers' days or earlier days, and they're black and white photographs, and you see maybe a couple of guys who were sitting next to a train stop or something in a black and white photograph, and you think, I wonder what their life was like. I wonder how they lived. I wonder what it was like going through that era, that particular time, and what their troubles and concerns were. And it's been a fascination for me in recent years to go to some of the most iconic ancient things around the world, like the pyramids, Chichen Itza, Machu Picchu, and to see these places and go, somebody put that stone there 3,500 years ago. What was going through their mind? What was going on in their life? How would they be like to be remembered? You know, were they someone who helped other people, or were they, you know, so busy trying to make enough money or whatever they were trying to do? Were they present? Were they aware? Were they contributing? It's fascinating. I find it fascinating to think back. You touch a stone and you think somebody put that stone there 3,500 years ago. It's powerful, isn't it? So one day people will be looking back at us, or the remains of us, or some photograph of us, or whatever it is you've created. Maybe you might write a book. Maybe there's a book in you if you haven't written one yet. Maybe there's a film. You might be a filmmaker or a musician. You might write a song. How powerful would that be to write a song and have people singing it around a campfire in 200 years? I'd love to be one of the Beatles. I mean, those guys, they're going to be singing their songs for centuries. Hopefully people will be reading my book in future generations. So anyone else got any thoughts they want to add to that? I think this was overall for me, a very powerful book, and one that you can go back to time and again and remind yourself of some of the key lessons from it. Anyone else, any last thoughts on that?
I just had a question. When you were mentioning, did you say Chichen or Chichen?
In
What is it?
Mexico. It's so Chichen Itza is where is it now? It's in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, and so built by the Mayans.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So like I often hear about the Mayan ruins.
Yeah. So this is one of them. This is a pyramid that you, at the top of it, it's so perfectly created that at the very top of it there is what would you call it, like a sun gate or something, where when the sun comes through at a certain moment of the year, the light reflects down, and there's a building, and they've built a building on each of the four corners where the light reflects perfectly into those things. Exactly the same thing that they did at
Stonehenge.
that the Incas did at
Oh,
Machu Picchu. So when you're at Machu Picchu and there's a sun gate up on one mountain and there's another thing up on another mountain, and when the light comes through that sun gate and it lights up through a window into a room in the middle of Machu Picchu, when it lights up that room, they knew that's spring. It's time to go and plant the crops. When it lights up from that mountain up there and it comes perfectly through that window and lights up that room, that's time to go and take out the crops. Or, you know, so it was perfectly north, south,
wow.
east, west. And so they did that with the Incas did that with Machu Picchu. The Mayans did it with Chichen Itza. And another curious thing, and that in common with the pyramids, is the stones are so perfectly placed together, you could not put a credit card in between these 20-ton pieces of rock. So that just fascinates me, the whole thing of how did they do this? How did they create this stuff? How did they put it together? When you see inside the pyramid and you see the Pharaoh's tomb, and you've got 20-ton pieces of granite that have a perfect 90-degree angle in the ceiling where the Pharaoh's tomb is placed, where his coffin is, or sarcophagus is put. I mean, again, how the hell did they do that? It's just fascinating to me.
Did it make you think about UFOs?
Oh yeah, of course. You explore all the different different theories and wonder how this could have come about. But I don't know. I mean, yeah, could they have had help from visitors from somewhere else? Quite possibly. But there's also that interesting comment that I think Wendy made, and it was that, like with this book, that it helps you remember things that you forgot, things you already knew, but you weren't keeping front of mind. So that's another thing about the power of these books. They're not really telling you anything new. We all know this. We all know the difference in being present and being distracted, and yet we need to be reminded of it. We all know that it's important to take notice of other people and to offer a helping hand or to contribute something, and yet it's easy to forget. So the power of these books is they remind us of all these good qualities within us, that our integrity, our willingness to contribute, our willingness to be loving towards people and to live in the moment. We know all this stuff, but we forget it. We let distraction get in the way and pull us away from it. So that is a very powerful aspect to books like this, is that it refocuses you and it reminds you of what is important in life, and that we do only have a short time. So we really do need to make the most of it. And continuing on that theme, we will be going next on to the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think I mentioned that a week or two ago, which is by Stephen Covey. So you should get a little bit more of this, being reminded of what makes a difference and what we, I hate to use that word should, but what we could choose to be doing instead of what perhaps we might be doing as an alternative. Let's put it that way.
You just use can. We can.
We can. Thank you. I was trying to think of another word for should without saying should.
We can.
We can or we cannot. It's up to us. So yeah, any other thoughts on the Motivation Manifesto before we close off on this meeting? Just conscious of time, and we have a final.
I've got a lot of reading to do to catch up. I want to finish this one so I can start on the next book.
Well, that's just, you just got to, you deserve a good spanking for that. You need to catch up. Come on, pull your finger out.
I give myself permission to spend all weekend reading.
Excellent. That's what we like to hear. And patting horses as well, no doubt.
Yes, well, there might be some more of that today. We'll see.
Any other thoughts? Anyone? Last thoughts on this book before we go? Anything that you're going to go away and implement as a result that's really resonated with you? Any
Actually, Tony, what you've said, you've said about keeping to your agenda, but also being present and being kind, being able to help people and realizing when you can be kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, because that could appear contradictory, couldn't it? It could be, well, hang on, I'm supposed to be watching my agenda, so why let other people distract me? But that's a different thing to being aware of where you can make a difference. I feel that's a good point. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you everybody for your contribution today, and for those of you who've been able to attend in previous sessions. That's finalizing our review of the Motivation Manifesto today. We're finalizing it for now. We might come back to it at another time, who knows? But let's go on from this point on to the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And if anyone has any recommendations for a book they'd really like to cover, feel free to message me about it. I'm just working my way through my personal list of some of the books that have really impacted on me over the years, and it's, for me, it's great to go back and revisit them, because even though I've read them before, I'm still being reminded of things that I've allowed myself to forget, and that I need to choose to refocus on. So you're all helping me with that, so thank you for that, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye for now.
Bye.